Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. I'm joined today by Freddy, aka the Points Panda. Freddy, how's it going, man?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm here in Mexico, and you normally live in Ciudad de Mexico, I believe, but you're in Bogota at the moment.
Yeah. I found someone to sublease my apartment, flying on points. So I figured, why not? I'm in Bogota right now, which is my first stop. Then I'm heading to Medellin for a few days, and then I'm traveling in Peru for 2 weeks, which used to be one of my favorite destinations. But since COVID hit, this is going to be my first time back because, they're so strict with all the COVID rules there and everything. So pretty excited about that too. Just, catch up with some friends there that I haven't seen in a while.
Nice. What do you like about Peru?
I don't. It's just a really fun mix of things to do. You got mountains, you have the beach, the food's really good. In Lima, at least pre-COVID, had good nightlife too. It's just a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun in the city called Arequipa as well, which is like this hidden gem. I think it's the third or fourth largest city in Peru, and I just feel like the whole country is a little bit underrated for digital nomads. And yeah, I've made a lot of friends there over the years that I visit. I went the first time in 2018, and I went back quite a few times 2019, and I was supposed to go back in 2020, and then the pandemic hit, and this will be my first time back in 2022. But yeah, if you haven't been, it's just so much to do really as a tourist and a traveler. And then once you kind of hit all that stuff, there's still it's just a good variety of things going on there. I definitely recommend the country.
Yeah. I've never been to Peru. On mylatinlife.com, we do have a city guide for Arequipa. The original Vance has done some time. He spent a lot of time in Peru, actually. He lived in Lima. And yeah, so I've heard good things for Arequipa over and over again for years. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I wanted to give you like a little bit more of a proper introduction.
Hmm.
So I first learned about you through Danny Boo Boo, Dan Rustine, who is a previous guest on the podcast, and I asked him who else I should interview, and you were the first name that he mentioned, and he said, and I'll bring it up if I can. Oh, I let it go, but he said something about how you started, apart from Points Panda, you also started a chess course company, something to do with chess,
Yeah,
and that
iChess.
you obviously love Mexico.
Yeah. Well, this thing about cities and where to live, it's not always well. There is love too, for sure, but there's also a lot of like practical considerations. There's a lot of things I love about Brazil and Peru and Colombia and South America in general that I don't have in Mexico. But Mexico is just so practical, It's
Yeah, it's a good
it's so
balance.
close to the U.S., but the problem is, over the last year or two, other people have caught on as well, and it's like housing and food prices and everything. I think I don't know how many people were living in Mexico, foreigners before, or actually, I should say Americans. I think officially there were 1 million Americans living uh, on residency visas, but probably about another 1 million living just on tourist visas because up until recently they were very generous with that. You could go for 6 months, go to Guatemala for a week, come back another 6 months. And that
Yeah.
attracted a lot of people. Are cracking down on it a little bit. I don't know what the numbers are now, but it's got to be at least double. I mean, there's got to be, it's probably like around 4 or 5 million Americans now living in Mexico compared to maybe 2 million before, which is insane for a country of 120 million people. I mean, so many Americans have been arriving to Playa del Carmen, Tulum,
Yep.
Mexico City, and a few other places that they're really starting to kind of change the culture there because there's just so many people showing up. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm in Playa del Carmen right now, where obviously it's a very high ratio. Mexico wide, countrywide, we're going to be like 5% of the population soon.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. So it's still a little fun to come in South America where, you know, there's not so many foreigners and you get treated well, except for Medellin, of course. Medellin is packed to the brim, but um, you know, have a good time and stuff. And yeah, I met last time I saw Danny was in Brazil actually in October 2020. We had a
Yep.
great time in Brasilia, and Brazil's just a fun place. It's just so easy to make friends there, and it's just crazy. Like I was just traveling alone through the north of Brazil and these cities like Belém, Manaus, and I went to the city called
No way.
Santarém, which is like halfway between Belém and Manaus. It's in the middle of the Amazon
Okay.
rainforest, like the Amazon River tributary. So the Amazon River isn't really one river; it's like a bazillion rivers, and then it's like think about it like a tree branch, right? And then it has
Yep.
this one big river in the center, and Santarém is where all the rivers come together. And they had this kind of like hippie town just outside there called Alter do
Yeah, and there's a
Chão.
beach river, right?
Yeah, and the river's so big it looks like an ocean. You can't even see the other side, and sometimes there's even like a little bit of waves and stuff. And I went on some tours there. And the way Brazilians are, it's like you meet one, and it doesn't matter who you are. They want to introduce you to everybody else, and then they want to introduce you to everybody else. And next thing you know, like 5 days later, you're like friends with like 60 people. And that's just kind of the snowball that happened in Santarém, actually in Alter do Chão. And a lot of these people just happen to be from Brasilia. So Danny came there. He was living in Sao Paulo. I'm like, dude, come for a few days. He's like, well, what's going on in Brazil? It's not really a touristy city. I don't really recommend going. But I had made so many friends there. It was like I had like an entire social circle just from the previous week,
Yeah.
and we had a really good time partying and going out. And we hung out in Sao Paulo for a few days as well. And yeah, haven't seen him since then. But I know he's hanging in Medellin, having a good time.
That's dope, man. Yeah, I was there right around the same time. I met up with Danny in Sao Paulo. I want to say in November 2020, so
Mm-hmm.
probably not too long after. So I've hung out with Danny in Sao Paulo and also in Medellin. I also just wanted to finish your introduction for the audience. So Points Panda is a travel hacking consultancy that specializes in helping people become travel hackers through credit card rewards, things like that. I love learning about this stuff. You know, I got the Chase Sapphire Reserve. You know, a couple different cards. You know, I've kind of gone deep on some of this stuff, status with the airlines, with the rental car companies. So I totally get it, and I totally get the premise of your channel, and how you really sort of focused on the points and the travel hacking, and almost just kind of being like another the points guy. This is just I notice you haven't been like uploading recently though. I Is this just something you've been doing on the side? Where's your emphasis now?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been a little bit all over the place. So Points Panda was popping in late 2019 after I had sold iChess in early January 2019. We were going to sell, but my partner ended up buying my shares, and it started as a travel hacking consultancy before I even really had a web page. It was just basically like a landing page and an intake form, and I just started just with the Facebook post and Twitter post to friends charging $1,000 a year for unlimited credit card consulting and unlimited award booking. And at the time, it was just popping. There were so many people who wanted the service, right? And that continued until
Damn.
COVID hit. And I was putting all that money I was getting from so the productized service that was just supposed to be kind of a way for me to make money, to spend the money on the blog and eventually become a credit card affiliate blog and shut down that service or outsource it because I wasn't really interested in trading my time for money over the long run. And
Right.
that was basically the rug got pulled once COVID hit. No one was interested in signing up anymore. And I kept spending money on the blog. I still work on it a little bit. I'm focusing more on the SEO side of things. And in 2021, I was looking to buy an online business with the money that I had gotten, but the asset prices just got so high that I would either have to take a really small business or take on a huge debt burden at what could be the peak of the martin, peak of the market, and end up underwater. So after a few months, I shied away from the idea of buying a business, And now I've been looking more for consulting opportunities as a CMO, potentially getting either a part-time job or a couple of different clients. Just I'm a digital marketer at heart. Even though I ran an online business, I was very focused on the marketing side of things.
Mhm.
And yeah, maybe put a little bit of money in a points panda. I mean, it's been making about a grand a month, and I've been spending about a grand a month, and it's just slowly growing on Google. But I've just kind of moved on since it lost so much money in 20, all the money it made in 2019, it lost in 2020. And then 2021 was basically break even on it. So I still, over the long run, think it has a lot of opportunity. But right now, I'm kind of shifting to some other opportunities as well. So it's still active. I've actually been thinking about switching this concierge thing, or the consultancy, I would say, into more of like an academy style thing where it's like you pay me and I'll just teach you how to do it yourself, and we'll have like some private webinars and course material and things like that. I
Yeah.
think that might be a bit of a better fit, and actually where I want to help. It's more exciting for me to help people that have never been on a lay flat business class seat or first class seat get to experience that than what a lot of my clients were like in late 2019, early 2020, which was more, a lot of people kind of exploited my business model because I said unlimited award booking. So I ended up with, online business owners that have millions of points from Facebook ads or Google ad spends that were like, I'm booking this, I'm booking this. You said unlimited, right? And I stuck to my word. But those weren't necessarily my ideal clients.
Right. Yeah, Danny was right. Having you on was definitely a good idea. I think we overlap on so much stuff. I can tell that you're really smart about this. And when I went on the Points Panda website, my immediate thought was this is not just another WordPress blog. Like the website looks super sleek. It looks like the website of a much larger entity. It's super super well done. So I can definitely see that you invested a lot of money into it. How many like
Yeah.
monthly visits does the website get?
It's been growing. It's been getting now about 100,000 page views a month. I mean, in terms of users, I think it's about 40,000. I think that comes out to about 300 clicks a day. So the traffic is great. I just haven't really spent enough time converting it beyond, credit card signups, which have massive payouts. I'm not allowed to say, what
Yeah,
the exact payout is for each card, but I can say in general, they range from $200 to $400 per successful sign up, right? Which sounds amazing, but
damn.
for every 1,000 people that come on the blog, maybe one will apply to an application, and out of that, maybe 20 or 30% will get approved, right? So 100,000 page views equals maybe three signups. It's harder than it sounds, right? So I've been wanting to expand that to just include more products and different things. It's very hard at the size of where my blog is now
Different
to
affiliate offers.
fund, yeah, different affiliate offers, maybe set up an e-commerce store. I think people are more interested in one-off award bookings now, which I still do for like friends and family and stuff like that. But one second here, let me just turn this off. Sorry, they're still hitting me up at Verizon. I've been trying to activate my eSIM all day since I had my phone stolen, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, with Points Pen, I have been a little bit discouraged, since it was just blowing up so hard before the pandemic hit. And then 2020 was just, and early 2021 is just, I felt like I was throwing good money at that. And now I think things are coming back a little bit, but psychologically, like it was kind of tough to get back into it after that whole experience. But I still love travel hacking, and I learned all about travel hacking in my last business where we started iChess also as not consultants, what I say, like private classes that my business partner was doing at the time on Skype, and we were like, hey, there's this new platform called YouTube where we can post these videos to promote the classes. And at the time, YouTube was kind of like
Test
TikTok.
classes.
There just weren't that many people on it yet, so it was very easy to get a following. Now it's like really, really hard. So things took off, and we said, well, people love these videos so much, why don't we start selling the videos themselves? And then we started working with like low level chess masters, and over the years we worked our way up to the top players in the world. The top, actually the best sellers weren't the top chess players, because some of the top, we worked with the highest rated female chess player of all time. We worked with a lot of people that were in the top 20 chess players in terms of rank, but the best sellers were the people that
Hmm.
had a large following on YouTube, like kind of like chess influencers, you could call them, right? They're on Twitch. Like there's
Yeah,
these
yeah,
Twitch
makes sense.
channels that are
Makes
like have get
sense.
so many chess players, and yeah, it was cool, but we had to like a lot of these as we worked our way up. A lot of these chess players they have like long Wikipedia pages, and they're in their niche. They're kind of like famous, so they didn't want me to just go on
Right.
Upwork and hire a video editor to go out. They'd want me to fly out. So in 2015, 2016, 17, 18, I was flying to Europe and South America, especially Europe, like it was like nonstop. It was like every 2 or 3 weeks I had another business trip. And a lot of times we were going for like only 2 or 3 days. And I was only booking flights from the portal. And then I started learning about all this transfer partner stuff and the alliances and things like that. And I just realized like how much better the deals were, right? It's like a one-way flight or round trip business class was, I don't know, let's say $3,000. So on a portal, it would be 300,000 points. But by knowing the right transfer partners, it would be 60,000 points each way. So, what was I saying? Yeah, so you could save tons of money on points, and I don't know. It's kind of like a gambling or crypto. You start getting this kind of addiction to it with the numbers and the money,
Yeah.
and I just got better and better and better at it. And I don't know. Once I sold iChess, I'm like, well, what the heck do I do next? And I started this consultancy. Then I started the blog. And you're right. I put so much work into the website. I was really, really picky about the imaging and branding. I wanted it to look professional, and that's how I was able to attract the credit card affiliate offers. They're really picky about who they work with. And
Hmm.
yeah, it seemed like it was about to be my next, 7-figure business until COVID hit, and then it was just a giant money sink for a little while. And now I'm going to keep putting a little bit of time into it, but I kind of realized I like helping other people with their businesses as well, and kind of moving in the direction of potentially being a fractional CMO, which is just essentially a head of marketing for someone who can't afford a full-time head of marketing. It's like
Hmm.
when you have an online business, there's so many different things you can do. You need someone who has a lot of experience to figure out what you need to do and come up with a plan, because you don't have an unlimited budget. You can't do Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Google ads and Facebook ads. Like, you gotta figure out what works for you, and then comes with this strategy to make it happen, right? What's going to work best for you. So it's kind of like what's going to take up my time for a little bit until my goal is still to buy a business. I'm just still waiting for the market to cool off. So I know a lot of your listeners might know that the real estate market just went off the rails last year, and that applies to the internet business market as well. It just got so expensive, it just didn't make any sense, right? Like, I'll give you just a random example. It's like a business that was doing maybe 200K in net profit, right, on let's say a million in revenue, whatever, was maybe selling for like 500K. They would list for 6 or 700K, and it was what they would call a buyer's market. The buyer had more leverage because they just like when you would list an online business. It would maybe be a
Yeah.
week or two, maybe three, until you get your first serious buyer, and it might take multiple months. And now it's totally changed. It's a total seller's market. um, Tons of businesses are getting hit up to sell that aren't even listed. There's people just emailing them, and when they do list, they usually get multiple offers on the first day and dozens of offers within a few weeks. So now that same $200,000 business is selling maybe closer to $1 million, right? So that's almost approaching like real estate returns with much higher risk, right? I'd have to take out a huge loan, and so I ended up shying away and saying, look, eventually the market's going to crash and there'll be a good time to buy. But it's a little bit different, like getting in at the peak with crypto and stocks and some of this other stuff, because it's very liquid, right? You can easily get out, right? With buying an online business with a huge amount of debt right at the peak of this bubble, I don't know. I couldn't stomach the risk, and this year it's looking like the market's already starting to cool off a little bit in various asset classes. So we'll see what happens. I still in the long run want to have a portfolio of online businesses. I think they're very recession proof. during the good times, no one wants to run an online. So many of my friends have just dropped out of running their businesses because we're in like wacky clown world where up until very recently, I know in the last month, the market's cooled off. It literally more, made more sense, paid more money to work on passive investments instead of active investments. So you would make more money putting your money in real estate or crypto or some of the stocks than you would working on your funneling the money back into the online business. Now, when things cool off and it's a down market, that's definitely the opposite, right? You're going to make way more money in a business than you are, in a market that's in a downturn. So I think this year we're going to start seeing people, go back to work because literally everybody has just been hanging out and including myself. And yeah, that's kind of where I've been now. I know you also wanted a little bit of the early story of how I ended up. I feel like longtime digital nomads hate the term digital nomads, but I don't know what else to call people like us. So I tried a few corporate jobs in 2008, 2009, even though it was a recession. My grades were so
And where are you
good.
from?
And
Sorry.
I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to school in Athens, Georgia, UGA.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So tried a few jobs, got fired from all of them. I got fired from Home Depot, got fired from another Fortune 500 company called NCR, which makes ATM machines. And I tried so hard not to get fired from that company, and I ended up fired anyways I hate the corporate world over the most minute shit. Like they wrote me up. I was there for like 3 months and they wrote me up one time because I wore like one of those little limo driver hats. Because at the time, like I have long hair now, but it was a little bit in an awkward phase. So I did and they didn't tell me anything for like 2 weeks. And they're like, "Do you think that's okay?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? This like little hat." So, anyways, after that, I realized, these little politics of the corporate world just aren't for me. So, which everyone said at the time was a blessing in disguise. Like, this is the best thing that ever happened to you, which was true. But I didn't feel that way at the time. I felt like a total failure. I had some money saved up from different jobs in college. I traveled a little bit in Europe for 3 months, came back, didn't really know what to do. So I said, screw it. I'm just going to go to Buenos Aires, where my mom's from Buenos Aires. I grew up in the
Oh,
US,
no
but my
way.
mom's from there. Yeah, so I had a lot of relatives there. I lived there for a year and I did 20 hours of Spanish a week every week for a year. And there's like no English speakers in Argentina, especially 12 years ago when I was living there. And my Spanish went from pretty good to absolutely fluent. And yeah, it was cool. And I didn't really know what to do. But at the time, this whole idea of working online and living abroad still wasn't in the mainstream, even for people like me. And that's where I
And we're
started
talking
meeting
like
like
2010 or
2010, 2011. Yeah, about 10,
yeah.
11, 12 years ago. I started meeting, various people like, programming, running websites, doing local businesses. The expat scene there was kind of, tight knit. And that just gave me an idea. I'm like, well, if these people can do it, I can do it. And that's, when I reached out to I also had a few jobs working for digital nomads at the time, also got fired from them. But uh, yeah, that's where I started the chess business, and my friend, former partner, still a good friend of mine, he was already teaching chess online, and I said, look, I'll make you a website to try to, because at the time we were getting clients by spamming Craigslist using like VPNs and stuff like that, and they were constantly shutting our because it was like local listings for chess, but once they contacted us, we'd be like, oh, it's actually online on Skype. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. I'm like, look, let me make you a website. We'll start writing articles, doing videos. And at the time, Google was less competitive. YouTube was just a joke at the time. No one was doing chess videos. The people that were really low quality. Now the content is just absolutely fantastic, like high level grandmasters, perfect editing of the video and audio. But at the time, it was just like, if you did anything even half-assed, it would go to like, 20, 30,000 views. You'd get a lot of viewers, as there was just probably 99.9% less content on YouTube than there is now. So it was really easy to take off. And from there, we just started selling the chess courses, and things just took off from there. We had peaked about $1.3 million in sales, something like that, around 2017. And yeah, it grew in a huge business, and that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to sell. It was very labor intensive. We were relying a lot on email marketing, constant newsletters, three product launches a month, working with other sites, with them being our affiliate, us as an affiliate of other sites. Just I was constantly flying out to record all these videos as well. I got pretty good at videography as well through doing all that because it was just cheaper that way. Honestly, just me bringing my SLR and a little bit of lighting and audio or whatever. And that's where I learned about the point stuff. But by early 2019, I had enough because 2017, 2018, it's not like I was working to the bone. Honestly, I was probably working maybe 40 hours a week, but 40 hours a week is not the lifestyle that I wanted, right? So yeah, I told my partner I wanted out. We thought about selling. We negotiated a price. He gave me about 2.5 years salary plus, of course, the points about like maybe 15, $20,000 worth of points. And yeah, we had called it a day, and that brings me to Points Panda. So during the whole 8 years that I was running iChess, I was traveling like crazy from I spent a lot of time in Thailand. I spent a lot of time in Spain, but most of my time was really spent hopping back and forth between Mexico and Brazil. And eventually, I just decided by 2015, I was like 3 or 4 years of kind of this lifestyle. About that time was my 30th birthday, and I felt like I kind of had enough of this moving around every month or two because I every time I was making new friends, then I was having a girl I was dating that seemed to kind of be turning into a girlfriend and kind of getting settled, and then like okay, 2 months later, we're gonna start again, and it was like kind of exciting at the time, but after a while, it just got kind of tiring. And Mexico City just checked off all the boxes at the time of a home base. It was, a few hour flight from just about anywhere in the US, less than 3 hour flight from Atlanta, where I grew up, kind of very centrally located in Latin America, a few hour flight from Colombia and Peru. And yeah, I just love the food, the people. Mexico City's getting a little bit expensive now. It's not like crazy expensive, but at the time it was so cheap, and there were no foreigners there at all. It was crazy. Like whenever I saw another gringo, I like passing the street. It's like we like cross eyes, like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And now, just since this whole so the newcomers now to this whole lifestyle are the work from home crowd. These people that
Yeah.
have like corporate jobs that
Yep.
they don't have to go in the office anymore, or their jobs are letting them go abroad for a few months. Or in a lot of cases, I heard a lot of people that they use VPNs and stuff, and the company doesn't even know they're abroad. They think they're
Pretend.
just yeah, tons of people. They're like, yeah, my employer thinks I'm in Minneapolis freezing my butt off. I've been just here the whole time, and I mean, as long as the work gets done, yeah, I guess it's don't ask, don't tell. But these like are I even 3 years ago or 2 years ago, it was hard. Like I'd have to work really hard to get like a dinner together with like 12 foreigners and us just hanging out and talking about like internet business and all that kind of stuff. And now these meetups, like there's this girl Rachel in Mexico City. You should interview her too. She's been putting together all these different Telegram and WhatsApp groups with different interest groups. But every meetup I go to now is like 100, 200 people like packing in the restaurants. It's gotten insane. And it's the same way in Playa del Carmen and Tulum. It's like an invasion of foreigners. And it's really cool in some ways because I'm meeting all these people that come from a tech background in New York and San Francisco and stuff. And they're just really interesting because they've had such a different life experience than me. And now they're, coming down and kind of doing the same thing I've been doing for many years. Of course, on the other hand, there's been a little bit of tension. The Mexicans, like, they're driving up the prices of everything, like, right? A lot of gentrification, especially in Condesa and La Roma, and some other issues. But overall, I think it's a positive effect. And yeah, times are changing. It's not like a niche thing anymore. Like everybody's going abroad. Everybody's trying to save money by, living in kind of the developing world. And I think it's, brings some good, some bad to Mexico. But I feel like I'm kind of ready to move on after 7 years. I've been thinking about maybe moving to Brazil or Colombia. Everyone's always joked that like Mexico's my wife and Brazil's like my mistress because Mexico's not like Yeah,
Yeah, I know
Mexico's
exactly
it's
what you mean.
yeah, it's like Mexico's nice, but it's not like a really, especially Mexico City. Like, yeah, sure, they have wild parties in Tulum and Puerto Escondido and all that stuff, right? I know that, but I'm saying in general, Mexican culture is not like that wild, that crazy. It's just chill. Like Mexico City has that kind of cool climate that's very conducive to getting work done in the coffee shop. There's a lot of stuff going on too. But it's kind of like medium, you know. It's like that kind of balance. It's like not so energetic, like let's say New York or San Francisco, but not so slow paced as like a little beach town somewhere in Mexico or Brazil or something, right? Whereas in Brazil, it's like I don't know what it is. Like the girls just love me there. They love Danny too, and just people just it's like they're so excited to meet foreigners, especially that speak Portuguese. You get it's like getting sucked into a vortex. It's like a very different experience, especially when you speak Portuguese. You just like it's just crazy. Everywhere you go, you make a million friends. It has this like you know, it's like every country kind of speaks to like a certain decade. You know, it's like Manila and the Philippines. It kind of feels like the 1990s. Then like eastern like the eastern part of Germany that was like the former socialist, but especially like Berlin and Austria kind of has like that 1980s feel with like the punk rock and the metal and everyone's dressing kind of in
Yeah,
leather and
sure,
black.
sure.
I feel like Brazil is just kind of like stuck in like the hippie revolution. It's got this like very like 1969 like free love kind of feel to it, and it's just very seducing. But it's also not very conducive to getting work done, right? Like Brazilians just don't give a shit about work in general. Some people do, of course, but work is just a means to an end. Whereas for Americans, it's like that's life, right? Like that defines who you are. And that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing. I feel it's just like every time I go to Brazil, I just feel like I'm living inside of just a giant music festival of like 200 million people. And like I've thought I'm just like like I want to move there so bad. It's like, is it practical though? Is it practical to move to Brazil or being so far from the U.S. where everything is really expensive? And despite Mexico's crime problems in Brazil, it's much worse. And all of that, I'm like, yeah, well, maybe I can give it a shot. I feel like Sao Paulo is kind of a middle ground because Sao Paulo is like the only place in Brazil where like people are actually doing work. Like the rest of Brazil, it's just like everyone's just goofing around. So it has, I feel it is a little bit of Mexico City, like in the sense that it's the place in Brazil where you can get work done, but there's also fun things going on as well. And it's not like living in one of these second tier cities where the economy is just so bad that just everybody's just given up basically on any form of career, and it's just fun all the time. And yeah, Sao Paulo has another similar Mexico City. It's a little bit up in the mountains. It's kind of cool most of the year for 8 months of the year. They have like a short summer where it gets a little hot, but it's kind of the same thing up in elevation. I have this feeling I just can't get good work done in a really hot climate. I don't know what it is, right? Like I have to be like in
I
Medellin
know
or
what you
Sao
mean.
Paulo or
I know what you
Mexico
mean.
City. And yeah, I've thought about moving there. It's like, well, you know, if Mexico's my wife and Brazil's my mistress, eventually, you know, you leave your wife for your mistress. So I feel like Sao Paulo is probably going to be the spot though, because any of these other cities, is there's no. That's another thing about Mexico. It's like I always wish that the networking was good there, right? Because I've spent a lot of time in Chang. All the digital nomad scene has moved, right? Because
Mhm.
everyone was in Southeast Asia, Bali, Chiang Mai, Bangkok, Saigon, a little bit of Manila as well, and Cebu. And everybody's gone now, right? Because once you leave, you can't come back. Okay, well, now they're just starting to open with all this
No,
quarantine and
that's
blah,
a
blah.
huge point. That's a huge point. Is Asia's
So,
been locked for 2 years, and all those digital
yeah,
nomads are
they're
not there.
gone. So they're all in
They're in
Mexico
Latin
now.
America, falling in love
And
with Latinas.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, actually, not just girls. So Mexican guys have this. They have this fetish about like not just white girls, but like blonde hair and blue eyes. I guess the girls kind of have it too, right? But I think the dating market for Mexican guys has gotten a lot better in Mexico City because these gringos want to go out with Mexican guys, And the Mexican guys have always had this huge fetish about this like blonde features or whatever. But there was just before like COVID, there really weren't like that many girls there, and now there are tons, and they're just loving it. They're they're having a good time too.
It's true.
Um,
I think that's an underrated point where Latin America almost just seems like a male phenomenon, but actually women would get just as much out of it because they'd be meeting these Latin men that know how to dance, they know how to be masculine, they can sing, like they're pretty like well-rounded, fun guys, and they like know what's up when it comes to dating.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's always just been an exotic factor for the other, regardless of your sex, right? It's like you got a foreign accent, you're a little bit different. That just, I don't know, it gives you a little bit of a leg up. But I think for guys, it's definitely gotten tougher in Mexico City. It's still not so bad, but I've just noticed
There's
like
definitely more competition, obviously, if
there's
there's more
tons
tourists.
more competition, right? It's like when I first came to Mexico City, I felt a little bit kind of like Bogota is here. Like when you go out to the club and stuff, they'd be like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Da, da, da. Like now, they've dated like a million foreign guys, especially on these dating apps. It's not quite as good as it used to be. And if I'm being totally honest, it's not the main factor, but kind of one of the factors of why I want to leave Mexico City because I got kind of spoiled being, like a top guy for a while, but then all these like you know, these guys from San Francisco, New York, or whatever that are way wealthier than me and better looking, whatever, kind of showed up and it pushed me down the ranking just a little bit. Um,
I
but
know what you mean.
it's
And
not.
question for you: so,
Yeah,
did you read My Latin Life back in the day? Did you used to? Were you familiar with it?
I
Did you read the
think I've
City
never heard
Guides?
the I've never heard your podcast to be honest, but I
The
bet
podcast
I've
is
read
new,
some
but
some some of
it's all
your
about the
some of your
vlog.
articles and just kind of like
Yeah,
forgot because the name just sounds really really familiar. But not 100% to be honest.
yeah. Well, because we had guides like even back in 2017 and stuff. We were the first website that had city guides on Bogota, Mexico City, Sao Paulo, everything, and it would be what neighborhood to stay in, what's the main bar street, and so forth and so on. So we've been around since 2014, and it was kind of like a pioneer in the space.
Yeah.
Um, so when uh, most random segue, but I wanted to go full circle in the chess thing because that's how you got started. So I imagine you were doing a mix of traveling to Asia, Eastern Europe, and Latin America. So where you go, like in my head, you'd just only be flying to Ukraine and Russia, but it sounds like you were doing more than
No,
that.
no. Okay. Well,
And
it's
then
it's actually not a
and then my
segue. It's
second
not. It's
question
not. Okay. Okay.
would be I guess a fun one, just like what country in Latin America has the best chess players?
Probably Argentina. Yeah, they have a big chess tradition there, but the strongest chess players are in U.S., Eastern Europe, Russia, and actually increasingly China as well. Yeah.
I believe it. I believe it. And so, do you? I always used to love reading because the three main digital nomad areas are Latin America, Eastern Europe, and Asia. And it looks like you have experience with all three. So it would be kind of be interesting to hear how you think about these different regions and kind of comparing and contrasting them a bit. I feel like you have philosophies on pretty much everything,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can compare. When you say Asia, I think you really mean Southeast Asia because there's a few weirdos like up in
basically.
China and Japan, but not really. Everyone's in Thailand, Vietnam, and Bali, but or was I should say. But what really didn't attract me to Southeast Asia? So I'm half Latino, right? My mom's from Argentina. I grew up around the culture. I always like loved it, and my Spanish is almost as fluent as my English, right? I just got a little bit of an accent, and so I just always feel in Southeast Asia, it's like, or Asia in general, it's like if you've never been, it's just so different. It's like when you get off the plane, like in Europe, like, yes, of course, like I don't speak French, I don't speak German, I do speak a little bit of Portuguese and Spanish, but it doesn't feel like I'm in an alien planet, right? It's like, I remember like, the first time I went to China, the first time I went to Asia in 2008 on a study abroad, I don't remember the exact year, 2007 maybe. It's like literally, if it's the closest thing you could get to flying to another planet, right? It's just the cultures are so different. So like, Latin America, North America, Western Europe, and Eastern Europe all are kind of tied to the same like background and culture if you go back enough, right? Which is Europe, and then Europe colonizing all these places. But in yes, like sure, like Netherlands colonized Holland for a while, and UK colonized India, but for the most part, like number one, for the areas that were colonized, it didn't have as much of an effect. It still has like their strong culture. And number two, a lot of the places like Thailand were just never really colonized at all. And so the norms and the culture and everything's just so different. I feel like even if you learn the language, and learning the language is exceptionally hard, it's going to take you 10 times longer to learn, Thai or Vietnamese than it would Spanish or Portuguese or
Yeah.
even Russian. Um, that you just like in Latin America, like people don't treat me like an alien, right? Like when you're in Thailand, like you're the other, you're a foreigner, whatever it is. Like you'll never be treated like a local there. And when I'm in Mexico, I don't really feel that way. I feel like I'm just, I'm like a local guy who grew up somewhere else, right? Like people don't mess with me, people don't try to rip me off. People treat me with respect. I speak Spanish. I feel like I'm at home, right? And a lot of foreigners, I feel like in Thailand stuff, like they just don't really care. They don't care that they are totally alien. A lot of them don't even bother learning any of the language, and frankly, the language is so hard, and so many people like in Thailand and Bali speak English anyways. They don't even bother. Um, and that just doesn't bother them really, because whatever, they're getting matches on, Tinder or Bumble, whatever, having a good time with the bros. They kind of stay like isolated in an island. And I love hanging out with foreigners in Mexico, but I have tons of local friends as well. And I can tell you in Southeast Asia, you could go on 10 dates a day as a foreign guy with dollars if that's what you really wanted to do. But finding one real male friend in Thailand or Vietnam, it's exceptionally hard for men to find male friends, local male friends there. And that also doesn't bother a lot of people that live there, but that bothers me as well. So that's kind of why I've always spent a month or two a year in Thailand. I love Thailand, but I've always felt like this is a place I visit like a month or two a year. It's not a place I'm going to make my base. And then you have just the fact that it's so far from the U.S. My parents are getting older. One of the things I love about Mexico is I go to Atlanta almost once a month, once every other month. I feel like I'm still tied to the U.S. My Verizon chip still works in Mexico. Like I still feel like have one foot in the U.S. While still getting all the tax benefits and
Yeah.
savings on healthcare about living abroad and everything. The IRS doesn't care if you're right across the border in Tijuana or if you're in Taipei. It's the same thing to them. You still get all the tax benefits. So Eastern Europe, I think that's an interesting one. I spent a few weeks in Ukraine this um, this summer. It's kind of become a bastion for people that hate like woke liberal politics, don't want to get vaccinated, all like crypto. It's like a kind of like it's become like Kiev has kind of become like this counterculture place, which is so weird. I thought like the left used to be the counterculture. I think like now the right's kind of become the counterculture. I guess these things like kind of go in the pendulum or whatever. And yeah, I feel I don't know what to think. I don't know enough about Eastern European culture. I know people are a little bit cold. I know there's definitely less like it's much colder. The people are like I don't really understand it. Right. I know the main reason people are there. Let's not beat around the bush. The reason there is for the beautiful women. Right. I mean, the weather's ugly. The cities are ugly. The food's really not that great, even though Kiev's become kind of a foodie destination. Um, that's kind of the main reason people go. And I don't know. I wouldn't want to live in Eastern Europe. I don't find the cities like very like Eastern Europe is much more developed than it was 10 years ago, but it's still it's not even about developed or developing. It's just I feel in Latin America, most cities and in Western Europe as well, cities are made for walking. Right, I really like that walkability factor, which is why it's kind of tough to leave Mexico
Yeah.
City. And in Eastern Europe, you don't really get that all that much. I mean, I guess in Kiev, sort of walkable downtown, and They also have really cold winters, so you either have to put up with those winters or you have to leave. And surprisingly, it's gotten really, really expensive in Eastern Europe, which used to be really, really cheap. Now it's really expensive. It's the same thing that's happening in Mexico City. Um, I don't have anything against any individual person that's like worked from home or whatever. But the collective effect it's had on these cities is this. There's lots of hotels. It used to be Airbnb was way cheaper than hotels. And now it's the other way around because they can't. Eventually, I think they're going to build more of these like medium term housing, but the cities just can't keep up with the infrastructure, the amount of digital nomads, crypto people, traders, and now especially the work from home crowd. There's just not enough medium term housing stock, right? If you want to get a
I
12-month
agree.
lease, easy. You want to get a hotel for a week, easy. But that like 2 to 3 week to 2 to 3 month kind of middle spot, people are really having problems right now. I mean, an Airbnb in Condesa now is like $3,000. I mean, 3 years ago it was like
That's
$800. It's like
insane.
crazy, right? Like, and the
Yeah.
same thing's happening in Kiev. The same, not yet in Medellin, but I think it's going to get there. In a lot of these cities, that's been happening now, and we'll see what happens. Maybe in a year, people go back to Asia. It seems like most of these countries are finally throwing in the towel. And some of them are still sticking to these insane rules, though. Bali made this big announcement that they're opening, quote unquote. You don't know what they consider opening is now instead of 10-day quarantine in Jakarta,
It's
it's a
5 day.
5-day quarantine. Oh, if you do, I only get a 5-day locked up in a hotel room. Sign me up. Plus filling out form after form. But I think they're going to throw in the towel on it pretty soon because it seems like COVID's just kind of turning into like kind of just another flu. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if people spread out or if everybody just sticks in Mexico. My guess is everybody sticks in Mexico because I feel like before COVID, people had this idea that Mexico is really dangerous, that you're going to get shot up by narcos and stuff, and you need to stay in the hotel area in Cancun. And like, yeah, there's crime, but I'd say the crime in Mexico is probably about the same as where I grew up in Atlanta. I grew up in a rich suburb, but downtown was like a no-go zone, and in some place it's become a lot more safe, but in some places it still is. Right? I felt like people don't understand it's the same thing about Mexico. Like you don't need to live in fear, and it started with Tulum and Playa, and then kind of Mexico City, but now foreigners are also kind of expanding to Puerto Escondido and Sayulita and Oaxaca and all these other places and realizing like, okay, Mexico is not really actually that dangerous, right? Like you just use common sense and watch your back. And so I think that mindset shift has reached kind of a critical mass where enough people feel that way to change the minds
Hmm.
or have a
Hmm.
counterpoint to the other. And so I think people it's just too convenient, right? Like you want to go to Thailand, it's like 20-hour flight. The rules can change at any notice with whatever next variant. It seems like this COVID thing's going to keep dragging on for years. And Mexico's kind of the safe play, right? You don't need a COVID test to get in. It's literally exactly halfway between like
Yeah.
California and Florida, right? It's like 2 hour flight to Texas, 3 hour flight to Los Angeles, and like 4 hour flight to New York. Like you couldn't be more in the middle in terms of and Playa as well is very easy, especially if you live on the East Coast. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I guess the last part of your question, when I think of Latin America, is well for me it's easy mode, right? I mean, you know, like obviously like the US and Canada and then the rest of the Americas, which is mostly the Spanish and Portuguese speaking world, have a lot of differences. In a lot of ways, I feel like Mexico is closer to China in terms of this like saving face culture. And I think Mexico's people are very conflict averse and feel justification like in the US, like you should always like the values is like you should always be direct. Like, would you agree or disagree with the statement? You should always like if you should always be direct with people, even if they don't like what you're going to say. I feel like 70 or 80% of Americans would agree with that statement, but only like 10% of Mexicans would agree with that statement. Right? There are
Full
major
flip.
differences in the way people think. But that being said, the cultures are still relatively similar, especially Brazil. Brazil is so similar to the U.S. and Canada in so many ways in the way people think and kind of they're like very like independent or what's the word? What's the opposite of collective, right? Um,
Individualistic.
Individualist. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, they all
Right.
got
But I don't,
tattoos and
yeah, but I don't in no in any country in Latin America, I don't feel like I'm landing in like outer space like I do when I land in Vietnam or Thailand or Japan is the worst of them all. Like what a different
right,
culture from the
right.
rest of the world that's just developed independently. Um, and so it's just very comfortable. Plus, Spanish is relatively easy to learn, especially like the basics of getting around. And then, of course, in certain places in Mexico, a lot of people speak English, and increasingly, like in Medellin too. So it's just getting easier as more people in Latin America learn English. This is especially true in Mexico. All the waiters and stuff. I know a lot of people in Playa and stuff, they don't even bother learning Spanish, right? You couldn't do that in Brazil or Argentina, not learning the local language. So you can kind of get away with it in Mexico a little bit because of the culture of the US. But for me, I know this is obviously subjective, but for me, Latin America is just easy mode, right? I know what to expect. All the Spanish speaking countries obviously have different cultures, but they're all tied together by the Spanish language, right? They
Yeah,
all watch each other's TV
yeah,
and
they interact.
movies and interact a lot and trade. And then Brazil kind of somewhat similar, but kind of its own thing, which makes it special, which is like the most underrated country on the planet. It's like one of the,
Agreed.
people just forget about Brazil that it even exists, which is funny because in Brazil, Brazilians think Brazil is like really, really important and people like talk about it abroad and stuff like the US, but not really, not really at all. And it's still fun. I feel like Brazil is the final frontier. Like all the gringos have showed up to Colombia and Peru and especially Mexico. But if you go outside of Rio and Sao Paulo, like in Brazil, like most of these people have never met a foreigner, right? Much less an American. That especially that speaks their language and stuff, and they're like really excited to see you. And I think it was like that in Latin America, 30 or even maybe 20 years ago, but those days are pretty much done in most of the tourist hotspots.
Damn, bro, you got me. I was just looking at it, and there was like $200 Cancun to Sao Paulo flights, like
They're
every
so
day of
cheap
the
right
week.
now, so cheap
So
on
cheap,
points.
and I was like, and now you've got me. You're like, now you're like making
They
me
they
do
changed it now.
something degenerate.
You don't need a PCR test anymore. You just need the
No way,
antigen. Yeah, you just need
no
the
way.
antigen. That's all you need to enter now. I think you also need to be vaccinated, which is ironic because Brazil's president is like a vocal anti-vaxxer. So I don't know what he's doing. I guess they made a exception for him. But
I
yeah,
want to get
no,
back to Brazil. It's just as huge of a topic as it is a country and landmass.
yeah.
Um, so do you still kind of speak with the Argentine accent? Are you saying show? And
Oh man. So that's a fantastic question. So my cousins, when I see them either in Florida or Argentina, wherever, they roast me so hard because after 7 years in Latin America, I speak with a thick called people from Mexico City called Chilangos, thick
yeah,
Chilango accent, which I was probably going to be a little bit politically incorrect, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Like just imagine if for an English speaker going from having like a pristine like Queen's English British accent, and then spending like a lot of time in 8 years in like rural Texas. Like that's basically been like my downgrade in accent, right? I've gone from like because the Argentine accent with its like Italian intonations and words and everything is like so pretty and so like smooth sounding and I don't know, the Mexican accent. It's like very like this. It's like very, it kind of like, well, I don't know. It's not known as being,
right. And the Chilango accent is known for
pristine.
being more like streetish.
Yeah, yeah. So they roast me so much. They're like, ¿qué pasa, güey? ¿Cómo estás, cabrón? Like they exaggerate. I'm like, dude, I don't fucking talk. Like, just imagine you, right? Like grew up
And
in the
you're like,
U.S.,
Jay,
man.
que caga.
Yeah, yeah. When I spent a little time in Buenos Aires, it quickly comes back. But like, imagine you spent 8 years in Australia and you just come back to the U.S. and like, oh, shrimp on the barbie,
You'd be
eh?
saying
Like,
some
and
weird
like,
shit. Yeah, you'd be
yeah,
saying
you
some
do.
weird shit.
They roast you, man. They roast you really hard.
Okay,
And
okay.
yeah, it's sad I
I
lost that
definitely feel
accent.
okay.
Uh,
Definitely a fish out of water type thing. Okay, and then so 7 years in Mexico. I mean, are you a resident now? You could even be a citizen by now if you were on that track, or
I
like, what's your visa
yeah.
status?
Yeah, so I have a like what's called a temporary resident, which is a bit of a
Yep.
misnomer because you're a temporary resident for 4 years. And next month, actually, I have to renew. It's gonna suck. I got to renew my Mexican residency. I got to renew my U.S. passport, and then I got to renew my Argentine passport. All hitting in 2022. My luck. My U.S. passport is in such bad shape that every time I'm like going to immigration, they're just looking at it like through one of like the microscope or something to see if it's real or not. Um, so I got to renew that. But yeah, my residency goes permanent, and then after 3 years, you can get citizenship if you want it. So, but I think you can stay a permanent resident as long as you want. I don't know if I'd want to get citizenship because then they might start busting my balls about taxes, which right now they don't, which they shouldn't because I so you got to be careful when you get residency in Mexico because they kind of try to trick you. Like when you're in immigration, they'll be like, okay, the two words you should never use to any immigration officer are the words work and family in any context whatsoever, right? Even if you're saying I work abroad, I work online, just don't say that. You just all you need to say is I'm living from my savings abroad. Like vivo con mis recursos en el exterior. It's in
Yeah.
Spanish, right? And so it
Yeah.
doesn't try
Yeah.
to
Mis
trick you, right?
ahorros.
It's like, oh, so like you're working on your computer. So I'm like, no, no, not at all, right? Because it's a non-working visa, but you're allowed to work on your computer. They don't really care. But yeah. I guess when I get permanent residency, I could technically work or get a job in Mexico. I don't know why I would. I thought about starting a business in Mexico. There's so many opportunities to cater to foreigners right now in Mexico City because they're getting there, they're confused. People like you and me, we've been doing this for years. Like they're new to all this, and they need help on all these different things. But I've been kind of scared to do anything in Mexico that would raise my profile because I feel like once you're doing something in like Mexico or Colombia and people know who you are, I feel like it increases the chances of you getting like kidnapped or extorted or some kind of bad things happening to you. So I just try to keep a pretty low profile and not do any business or anything. But I'm tempted to take the risk and just do it because there's just so much. Oh, there's just so much opportunity, I think, especially in terms of housing. Like everybody used to love Airbnb. Everyone hates Airbnb now. Like I've made it a point to get around their fees. Like this Airbnb I'm staying at right now is $800 for 8 day, $100 a day on Airbnb. I'll tell you a really cool trick on Airbnb. So as you probably know, like most of, well, Danny probably covered everything there is to cover about Airbnb, but I'll tell you from a he's the host perspective. I'll give you the guest perspective, right? So, um, if you look at the listings and it'll say like beautiful 2 bedroom in the heart of town, fast Wi-Fi, dash, Jimmy's Medellin, but it doesn't say .com. It just says like Jimmy's Medellin or something like that. And you'll see like 5 lists that say Jimmy's Medellin. I'm just making that name up, by the way. You go on Google and you type in
Yeah.
Jimmy's Medellin, and you'll find like kind of these I guess like kind of like real estate holding companies now, right? There's not so many of these individual hosts anymore like there was 5 years ago, right? They have the listings all there. You can hit them up. It's already
Hmm.
20-30% cheaper because they're cutting all the fees. Hit them up. They'll give you an additional discount to go off Airbnb. And suddenly that $100 a night
Yeah.
Airbnb is actually like $60. And like, another thing I like about it is then they can't. I hate that fucking review system. Sorry to curse, but I hate the review system on Airbnb and an Uber as well, and these apps where they review the guests. It's just so unnecessary, right? Because it just makes it where you're scared to complain because if you say anything, they technically the feedback's double blind. But if you were complaining, they probably know if they see that you left a review that it's going to be negative, so they'll leave a bad review back. So then it's like they're kind of like twisting your arm, like you better not leave a review because if you do, I know it's bad. I'm gonna leave it back. And so it leads to this system where it's like all these shitty Airbnbs have these great reviews, and it's BS, right? I just love being able to go off of it and not have to worry about them crapping on my profile because I left like 2 unwashed spoons in the sink or something, right? And it's way cheaper. I got
Right.
I got this place for about 70 a night. It's 30% discount. Right? I save hundreds of dollars. And anyways, there's like
Yeah.
these
I'd say,
Telegram
yeah,
groups
I typically
now.
recommend people to just book something for like maybe 5 days, get on the ground. And then when you're on the ground, just negotiate something in cash, and it'll
Yeah, yeah,
be
but
half price.
there's all these Telegram and WhatsApp groups now of people like subleasing and housing and stuff like that. And I'm like, it would be so cool
Mm.
to kind of make that official in some kind of website or some kind of way, and maybe just involve even a
Hmm.
way to pay in crypto or something. It's just kind of the trends of the day. That you wouldn't take the money, so like that way you're not liable, right? Because Airbnb takes the money, right? You're just connecting people that are subleasing, and the prices, you have no idea how much cheaper housing is in these Playa del Carmen Facebook groups and these Mexico City Telegram groups.
Yeah,
People just renting their spot for
yeah,
3 weeks for like $800, and that same spot might have been like 2.5 grand on Airbnb. Right, and you get to screw
yeah.
Airbnb over. I think they're a shitty company, and I don't like giving them. I want like people to boycott so like they reform and stop like being like I just feel like they're so deceptive in the way that they don't allow you to post your own photos of a place the way like TripAdvisor does. If another website tries to come up to review Airbnb listings, they'll try to sue you and threaten you. I think this system where they need to review the guests is totally unnecessary. Like what they should be doing is just the same thing as a hotel might be doing, right? It's like if you're a bad guest, then they can file a claim, and if too many hosts file claims, then you get kicked off, right? I'm not saying there should be no way to do it, but this whole system where it's like you complain about anything, and there's tons of things to complain about, right? And they kind of like threaten you, like the hosts used to be really nice like 5 years ago. Now they're dicks. Like all the Airbnb hosts now, they're all like they just don't want to help you or deal with you, and like I've just gotten so frustrated with the whole platform, and yeah, kind of and hashtag rant over, but
I agree with you, man, and I'm very enamored with Selena and Outsite and sort of that business model around co-living and hostels that have co-working spaces and stuff like that. So I think that's filling a niche and a need, and that's going to grow a lot as well.
yeah, Selena's everywhere now. They're in Bogota, Medellin. I even saw there's one in
Selena's
Arequipa
everywhere.
now. Yeah, they're in Puerto Escondido now too. I haven't had a chance
No
to
way.
stay in one yet, but I really love the idea because I used to stay in hostels. I like my early to mid 20s. It's so funny when you look back. You always think that you can predict what you're going to be like in 10 years. I was like, I'm never staying anywhere in hostels. I love hostels so much. Like I still stay in hostels sometimes. Like when I was in Denmark and Latvia this last summer in 2021, I stayed in hostels for a few days. But just this idea of co-living, but like a little bit higher end,
With a private room. Yeah.
with a private room. But also hostels if you're a shared room, if you're on a budget, and with good internet, right, and a little bit more upscale. And I think they really hitting the nail on the head there because it's fun to meet other people when you're traveling, and yeah.
No, I agree, man. I agree. Yeah, just coming back to the visa thing, because I really want to hear about your situation, so I'm sure other people will. I may or may not have just gotten the 4-year temporary residence permit a couple months ago, and so
Nice.
I'm looking off into the future into 2025, and my big question is like, how easy is it going to be to renew for permanent? And are they going to be, what if there's new requirements at that point in time? Are they going to look at my ties? Is it better to have more ties, less ties? Probably my
Nah,
situation will be
this.
different by then, but like, but like, would it be helpful if I actually had like an apartment or a car registered, or would it be helpful if I didn't? Or you know what I mean? Is it going to be a simple, like, how much discretion do they
Nah.
have? You know what I mean?
So there's ways to get permanent residency earlier than the 4 years of temporary residency. Like if you're starting a business or invest in real estate or get married to a Mexican, or a few other separate cases. I think also like if you have like a Argentine or Spanish passport, they kind of fast track you. But otherwise, all you need to do once you get the temporary residence. By the way, it's not 4 years. Well, it's you have a 1 year, then you renew it the next year for 2 years, and then after another 2 years, where I'm at, then for the fourth year, that's when you can
Okay.
I think you have to convert it to
I got
permanent
four off.
residency. It's
I may have gotten 4 off the bat.
really. Maybe they changed it.
Yeah,
For me, it sucked. Renewing
yeah,
ended up being worse than actually getting it because they had this like influx of Haitians and Venezuelans clogging up the system. There's just so many of them right at the same time that they had changed presidents, and this was a big deal because up until this point. Mexico was in a two-party system like the U.S. It's like Democrat, Republican, kind of same thing. I had Pan and Pri, but the people got fed up. I hope this happens in the U.S. The people got fed up and they just swept those other two parties, and a new party called Morena came into power. Right, so imagine like in the U.S. if it was just Democrats and Republicans co-running the government together, as dysfunctional as it is, they had their systems right, and then a new party comes in and gets the presidency and a majority of the two houses of Congress. And so they were changing everything right at that same time. And so it was like I, hours, and I was so boring. We had to go. You wait for it when you have to go to that office. You can't use your cell phone. You can't have headphones. You can't even use a Kindle. You can only read a book. And there a lot of times the chairs are reserved for like the elderly and incapacitated or whatever. And you have to
yeah.
you just stand, a lot of times I'd forget to bring a book. I would just be like rereading the documents like over and over again. Just had nothing else to do for hours and hours and hours. Just for them to tell you, it's like, yeah, you literally forgot to dot your I there, right? Like this was supposed to be in starting in capital letters. Like, come back tomorrow. You're like, dude, you got to be kidding me. But yeah, I've learned how to navigate the Mexican bureaucratic system. It's not as bad as like Argentina's or Brazil. I mean, that's about as Kafkaesque as you can get. But yeah, to answer your question, once you have temporary residency, all you have to do is, I don't know, not get arrested and not get kicked out. And oh, another important thing, when you have residency now, you every time you leave the country, you have to do exit immigration, and no one's going to force you to do it. So if you
Yeah, you have
forget
to
to
like
do exit
sign out.
immigration
Yeah, I've done
and you
it.
get
I've
on a
done it.
plane,
Gotcha.
you lose your residency. Supposedly, I'm sure there'd be a way to recover it, but like you really don't want to do that. So as long as you do that for a couple of years, it just turns permanent. I mean, they're not. It's not the U.S., right? They're not. They don't. It's Mexico, bro. Like they don't have. They don't have like the resources to be deeply interviewing people and going to your home and checking all this stuff. But yeah, I think just stay out of trouble for 4 years and that's it. Then it goes permanent. So
That's dope. And permanent is permanent, or does it renew every 5 years or something? Like,
permanent residency in Mexico is the equivalent of a green card in the US. It means that you can't lose it anymore. And even if you forgot to do your checking in, whatever, like you're a permanent resident now. And it also means that you're allowed to work. I think it means you're allowed to vote. And after a few years of permanent residency, then you can get your passport. Yeah. So you get a couple extra privileges. And I think okay, I'm not gonna lie. Like sometimes I just go into the Mexican line is always so much shorter than the foreigner line, and sometimes I just go into the Mexican line,
okay,
even though
okay.
with temporary residency you're not supposed to do that. I'm like, oh, but I'm a resident. They're like, okay, stamp your passport, whatever. When you have permanent residency, I'm pretty sure you can use the Mexican line, which means like an hour saved in the airport. Right, the lines are just brutal right now. They're getting a little bit better, but um, Mexico's tourism is higher now in 2021 than it was in 2019, which is incredibly unusual for most foreign countries. Like Peru's tourism's down like
Mhm.
80%, same thing with Thailand, etc. But not in Mexico. Mexico's popping right now. And so everything's at max capacity right now in Mexico. Like the internet's kind of slowing down, the traffic's kind of slowing down, the Airbnbs are disappearing. If you're gonna go there, don't expect to be you're not a genius. You're not the first person showing up here. But I'm sure they'll figure it out. I think they're building a lot of medium term housing right now in Mexico City to handle the influx of foreigners that are coming there, and they'll eventually sort it out.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so we'll start kind of wrapping up a little bit. I want to be respectful of your time, but it's also like really fascinating to speak with you because I feel like you could speak to any aspect of what we cover in My Latin Life. I feel, be it like living in different countries, comparing different countries, second passports, residencies, international tax, online business, digital nomad stuff. Dude, you got it all going on. Um, let's kick up a little like Brazil wanderlust. You know what I mean? So I literally have there's a phrase that's like, there's only two type of people in the world: those that have never been to Brazil and those that are trying to go back. And I feel like we're both a little bit in that camp, that second
Yeah,
camp.
yeah. People just when if you just go to Rio for a week, you don't really get deep into the culture, right? But when when you speak Portuguese, when you live there for a while, it's just such a fascinating, bizarre culture. I feel like some things like I'll give you an example. I feel like the women kind of have the role of men in terms of dating. Like they're the ones that are kind of like going after you instead of the other way around. And it's just this whole culture. Like in Brazil is one of the few countries that has no restrictions on alcohol whatsoever. They treat it like
You can
water.
drink
You
in the
can drink it
street.
and you can, yeah, but not just in a specific area like, in Mexico. I mean, anywhere. And not only can you drink it on the street, you're allowed to sell beer anywhere you want. You don't need a license. You don't need anything. You just set it out. And you can
Really?
like just
Yeah, because
yeah.
to explain this to people, I was so stunned at this. We were going to like kind of block parties at like 3 in the morning, and there'd be these guys with a shopping cart full of beers, and there's two guys standing there, and they both have credit card machines in their hands. And in Brazil, you can pay by credit card for almost anything. They're really advanced with it, and it's just like some dude with a shopping cart of beers, and he's just swiping people's credit cards, and whatever, it's like three beers for three
Yes,
bucks, and like
it's like their
the
welfare
party keeps
system
going.
there. Yeah, when all else fails, just sell some beers,
It's
right? I
insane.
mean, that's yeah, yeah. It's a really fun culture, right? But it's also very seducing, and it's like always why I'm not like totally sure if I would live in Brazil because it's cool to have like goals and ambitions, and even if after since I sold iChess and semi abandoned points pen, I'm not. It's only been like 2 or 3 years. Like I'm pretty proud of my accomplishments. Been a little bit, but over the long run, like I'm not that young, but I'm also not that old, right? Like I'm 35. I got
You're
like
ready
20
for your
years
next
left.
thing.
Yeah, I want to do some big things, right? And I want to like not just for the money. I don't need money at this point, but just to try to find like a purpose or something I really connect with. I feel like that's kind of the next phase. And when you're in a country like Brazil, and even Thailand, in some sense like that too, this kind of it's like a seducing culture. It's like, yeah, just come in and the parties and like everyone treats you so good, and you just forget like what you're supposed to be, what's your purpose on this planet, right? And you just kind of become one of these fun party people. I think you gotta have to find a balance there and have to push a little harder, and that's why I don't know Sao Paulo that well. I've spent a lot of time in Rio. I spent tons of time in Bahia, especially Itacaré. It's a beautiful beach town. This whole area from Salvador all the way down, it's like a 300-mile piece of coastline starting in Salvador and ending in Porto Seguro. It's called the Costa do Cacao, which is like it's where they used to grow a lot of cacao plants for like the chocolate or whatever. Then they had some blight
Yeah,
like 80 years ago, so that they don't grow it there anymore. But that's what it's called. There's so many of these like secret little beach towns. You know, what's really discovered Brazil
yeah.
is the Israeli
Trancosa, I think it's called.
Trancoso. Yeah, yeah, that whole area, Porto Seguro,
Yeah,
Trancoso,
yeah.
Caraíva. Yeah, Porto Seguro, I think, was one of the
Caraíba.
first places discovered in Latin America. I think they was like 1501 or 1502 they were there, but that whole area is crazy. It's just really nice beaches, and I don't know, like when you get out of Rio and stuff, it has like I've been to these like weird like small 100-person raves in the jungle. Like it has this like I feel like with cell phones and Airbnb and Uber and Tinder and these like Uber Eats and Rappi and Google Translate and the cell phone and the SIM card and the Wi-Fi, there's been a lot of like that loss of like when I was like in my late teens and early 20s, just before all that kind of like certain like adventure kind of feeling, that wild
Hmm.
west, like that you're getting into something and you don't know what
Hmm.
you're getting into. Like a lot of that has died. Like I feel like when you're traveling now, it doesn't feel so scary anymore, right? It feels like through the internet and everything, and through all these apps that serve all these different purposes, you feel more connected. And in Brazil, like you get a little bit of that magic back, when you're traveling. Like it's really like kind of like the Wild West out there. And for me, that's just so seducing when I travel. Like I love traveling more to like off the beat, weird places that people don't really go to than like specific tourist destinations. Like I kind of hate
Hmm.
Medellin. I kind of hate Playa del Carmen. I spend a lot of time in both just because I have so many friends there and there's always different like events and conferences and stuff. But I don't know. Brazil's just a different animal, man. I can't even really like explain it. It's that was just an event. Like that's something you'd have to do on your own. It's like the next level. Like go to Playa, go to Medellin, learn some Spanish, then like maybe go to Bogota and some of these other
And
second tier
that's
cities. And
gringo step one, digital nomad
yeah,
step
yeah,
one.
that's
And
like
then you got to
beginner
push
to
yourself.
Brazil's
Yeah.
like the final step in my Latin life. Like that's like advanced mode. Like it's so fun, but also like so much, so dangerous, so many pitfalls. And there's just a certain thing I just love about Brazilian women. And I know like every feminist said, oh, it's just the looks, right? Just like, yeah, but like looks wise, Brazilians and Colombians, I don't feel look all that different. There's just something specific about the personality of like Brazilian women that are just so like kind of like easygoing and fun loving and have this like there's like Brazil has this very strong connection with nature. Everything's about nature and outdoors, right? Like in the US, and even kind of Mexico too, we spend all our times indoors. Like Brazilians hate indoors. They spend all their times outdoors all the time. And it has this certain I don't know, it's just like this certain aesthetic to it. This is very like it's like a natural antidepressant. Like in Mexico, when I'm just like too much in my own head, I go to Brazil and like I just it just kind of snaps me out of it, especially when I'm going into these like weird adventures and stuff. And I don't know. You gotta do it. When you're ready. When you're ready, go to Rio, learn some Portuguese, and then start traveling in some of these second. I will say Brazil is not as terrifying as it was before all those different apps. And I remember traveling like 2010, 2011. I spent a lot of time in Brazil after Argentina, and it was just like terrifying before like cell phone internet and stuff. And you're like getting
Right.
into a bus station like 5 hours
Right.
out and you have no fucking
Right.
idea where you are. And you get out of the bus and like everyone's like looking, those memes of like all those girls that have like the weird look when you said something. That's the look that
Right.
that like the sorority girls, that stinky look. Everybody gives you that stinky look and you're like, oh fuck, if I was robbed and killed right, like nobody would notice. Like it would be probably weeks until people
No
even
one would
figure out what
know.
happened. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like
And you're just like, Genchi, hotel?
yeah, yeah. But at the end of the day, they're just curious, And there's more
It's true.
people. I know I know there's a lot of robbery in Brazil. But like there's for every one person who's like bad, there's like 20 that are good. Yeah, the
And they're
problem is that
really
five
good when
percent
they're
of the
good.
people want to rob you, though. That is a problem. But
Have you
I
been to
don't know.
Paraguay?
I have not. I've not. My friend wanted to go. I thought it'd be an interesting off the beaten path. I know. I mean, I've seen Paraguay from what is it, Iguazu or whatever, but I've never
Yeah.
never been. I don't know. I don't know much about it. I know how they got really devastated in that war in like the mid 19th century, and that's about it. I know China. I know there's a lot of mafia stuff going on there with like supposedly like terror like Islamic terrorists like have bases there and stuff. And I think it's like one of those forgotten countries. You don't really. Yeah, that's about as off the beaten path as you can get is Paraguay. I don't think anybody really go. I don't even know what it's known for really. And that's
Yeah.
me.
I've been a few
I'm about as
times
hardcore
and
as it gets. Oh
I think you'd
yeah,
like it. Yeah.
yeah,
I think you'd like it. Um,
yeah. All right. Well,
I also I wanted to ask you a bit about community. I can tell you're a pretty good networker. That wherever you go in Latin America or abroad, you somehow find the other like internet marketer guys, and I feel like you're organizing meetups or bringing people together, or just you're not just in your room grinding and then whatever, and then like a small circle thing. I feel like you are. Anyway, so my question is like, how do you think about community? And then in building community. And then, in some places it's just a lot easier than others. Like if you're in Playa or Medellin, like the community is going to smack you in the face. But if you go to Brazil or something, it's like kind of hard to, you won't be around people with a lot of human capital. Like you won't be around other internet marketers. You're not going to be able to talk about the same topics. How do you think about that? Like, do you need that sort of stimulation, or could you live without talking to another digital nomad guy?
Yeah, so for someone who's been doing this like 13 years, I think things have really changed. It used to be, like I was saying, all those different apps, right? You want to go dating? No Tinder. You got to go out to the club. You want to get a taxi? You can't just call an app. You have to actually talk to people, right? Oh, you want to hang out with some friends? There's like one or two other foreigners, but you really have to hang with the locals, right? Oh, you want to get housing? No Airbnb. You gotta be talkative. You gotta ask around. So like, so many of these things have been simplified from us, from housing to dating to ride shares to food, that used to have to interact, and learn the language, right? Which of course is nice, but I feel like there's also like a lost element to that too, right? Is you can just go somewhere and operate totally outside of the culture, make no local friends, and then of course on top of that, you have so many more foreigners than there just used to be like no foreigners when you go to a place. Like the idea that you could only hang out with foreigners is almost impossible. There just weren't enough people there, right?
Hmm.
And now it's like, yeah, Playa, Medellin, those are the two big hot spots. Mexico City is kind of becoming a hot spot too. Um, you can just only hang out with foreigners, which I think is cool. I really like it a lot. And until very recently, this was one of my main gripes is like, you go to a lot of these places and like, it's just really hard. It was used to be really hard to find. Like of course it's great to make friends with local people, and you totally should. But like, whenever you're going abroad, it's always nice to have people from your country or similar cultures. Let's say Canada, Australia, UK, and they just weren't really around in big numbers. Or if they were just on vacation. Staying at a
Right.
hostel for 5 days or something like that, right? And now it's just getting just everywhere you go now is just so many foreigners. And I guess it's like for me, it's a good thing, I think, because I'm already into the language, I'm already into the culture. But like sometimes I feel for new people, it's a bit of a crutch, to it.
Yeah.
Like like people when they travel now, they don't really get to know the culture anymore because of all those things I was saying. Right, every little thing that you have to do, from your housing to ride share to ordering food, either to your house or at a restaurant, to dating, to it's all facilitated through these apps. Oh, and not to mention directions, right? Remember before Google Maps, you always had to like talk to people. That was the biggest one of them all, is how you would meet people, right? I know a lot of like kind of guys are more to pick up like Danny. They still do that now. Is that's the classic one. Is they try to talk to a girl on the
Estoy
street, ask her.
perdido.
Yeah, yeah. That's how
Yeah.
you know now. The only time if someone's going to ask for directions is if they're trying to talk to you for another reason. And
Right.
a
Right.
lot of that
Where's
is
the
a
nearest
lot of that
coffee
is
shop?
yeah, yeah. And a lot of that's lost now. And so I feel there's a little bit of sadness to that loss. A lot of people who are going abroad won't get to experience that and won't get to push themselves out of their comfort zone. I mean, every time I was in Buenos Aires, ordering a taxi was kind of out of my comfort zone. That I don't miss. Even though I've been
I
using
can believe
taxis
it.
more and more
I
now,
can believe it.
taxis are the
Yeah,
kind of the new Uber.
I think for me, it's not about like local or foreigner, but more just a place where people are smart and working on big things. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just like, fuck, I should just go to fucking San Francisco while everyone's gone and like get some
Yeah,
cheap.
yeah, I feel that
But
way about. I feel
obviously, I never want to live in California. But I just mean like when you're just around normal people and one person like works in a hotel and then one person, they just all do like random stuff and there's no like knowledge share, and it sucks. And I feel like I'm did I lose you? um Back.
We
And
got
yeah,
what?
so it's just I like places like Boston and San Francisco where people are just super smart and operating at a super high level. And I guess that's kind of one of the reasons I'm in Playa del Carmen is at least here there are a lot of like internet people and smart people.
Yeah, yeah,
And so it's
I
cool in that
definitely agree
sense.
with
But when you
that.
go, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's just
so
something to
hit.
think about, like when you go to tier B cities and whatever, like how do you know I don't know. I think we should just do the best to build communities, and there's more and more tools, Nomad List and so forth. And I think in my Latin life we're gonna start getting into a community element as well, building a Facebook group and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's always like those old cartoons. You got the devil on one side and the angel on the other. Is like the devil's like, I'm gonna go to these second tier cities where no one's met a foreigner and everyone's gonna treat me like a rock star. And but like all my friends are
Yeah.
like just locals that are really let's be honest, not really doing much of anything, right? And that's why I like Mexico City. It's kind of like I feel like a medium fish in a medium pond. It's like I've thought the same thing you've thought. Like, especially not a screw San Francisco. Who the hell wants to live in California right now? But Austin is like Austin's had this
Awesome, yeah.
gravitational pull to me for a long time, even though the city, it's just, I'm not attracted to the city at all. It just feels like a larger version of where I went to school, which is, in Athens, Georgia. It just feels like a super large college town. But there's so many big people doing tech things, and just through serendipitous meetups and dinners, they get to meet. There's more and
Yeah.
more. Austin's really interesting because it's kind of like a collision between the tech San Francisco world and the digital nomad world, right? Like this is kind of this medium ground there where, or not even digital nomad, like the bootstrap world. People like us, no
Hmm.
funding. I'm going to start
Hmm.
this. I'm going to do that. And there's just so much
Hmm.
like ideas being exchanged, but like the city itself is not great. Dating from a male perspective is about as bad as it can get. It's not walkable. It's super hot in the summer, super cold in the winter. It's super expensive. Um, it's like, oh, I'm gonna sacrifice all that just to the networking and stuff. Like, I don't know,
Be around
maybe
smart people.
I don't
Mhm.
know. I guess I'm like somewhere in the middle of the spectrum between fun and ambition. And Mexico City kind of hits that for me, especially now. Um, the arrival of all these foreigners has been a bit of controversy with all the locals too, but with the people that have already been living there. There's kind of like this sense of like they're invading our space and stuff. I don't feel that way at all. Um, I go to these meetups and it's like I meet all these people from New York, San Francisco, wherever, London, that were doing really big
Mhm.
things with big companies, raising money and working for these multi-billion dollar companies and starting some of their own companies and just really operating on the next level. And for me, that's kind of exciting to hang out with them and understand like what they're doing and having them bring their knowledge and get to like hang out with them in the meetups. And this is something that's super, super,
Mhm.
super new. Like this is a new thing. Like this wasn't happening 2 years ago, right? It was just, well, Mexico City's kind of been a tourist destination for like a good 4 or 5 years now, right? There were people coming for a week or two, taking their photos of, all the architecture and stuff and leaving, right? Like now people are staying. Um, and it brings its pros and its cons. Obviously, like the more foreigners that show up, the less you get the rock star treatment, the higher the prices go up. But at the same time, the more you get to network with big people doing big things, right? And that's why I've always been attracted to
Yeah.
really big cities, right? Like I've literally all my Latin life I've spent in the big cities: Buenos Aires, Rio, Mexico City. Haven't spent much time in Sao Paulo yet, but it's been seducing me more and more as this kind of middle ground. Like I get to go travel to those fun second tier cities, as a quick domestic flight, but Brazilians really like digital marketing more than Argentines and Colombians, and I don't really know why. Like especially in Sao Paulo, there's a massive digital marketing scene. The whole like internet
Yeah.
shopping space, I think, is a little bit more developed than in Argentina and Colombia and Peru. Um, Mexico too now, especially since once Amazon hit the scene, I feel it kind of lit a fire, in Mexico for all these individual businesses as well. But yeah, I guess you got to find the middle ground there, right? I mean, if you're super, super mega ambitious and all you want to do is climb up a corporate ladder or finance and become a multimillionaire, then I don't know, maybe just stay in London or New York and San Francisco, and you'll miss out on all this other fun stuff. Or if you just a lot of my friends, honestly, like it's funny because in high school they'd always say like I'm kind of like the connection between the jocks and the nerds, and I still kind of feel that way because I like a lot of my friends they're fun people who like really don't care about doing anything except having fun and partying and traveling and hitting the beach and surfing and whatever few grand a month they can squeeze out from their internet businesses or consulting is like just a means to an end. And I love hanging out with them. They're really fun loving guys. And then, I also have like super ambitious friends who really don't go out much. And, anytime we're meeting, it's usually business related or just kind of that's what we chat about. And I love hanging out with those kind of people too. So I like having a kind of a middle ground place. I think, all work and no fun is bad. And, same the other way around. But yeah, I mean, you have to figure out what works for you, right? Because you can't have it all. Sorry. Are you going to go to Austin or San Francisco and network with all these high end people in the tech world? And then dating's going to suck. Dating in San Francisco and Austin is probably about as bad as it can get for a guy. And you're going to pay like 3 grand a month for a studio apartment, and the weather's so. Or are you going to go to a place that's really fun and but all your friends are working in a hotel or whatever you were saying, and maybe miss out on some of those networking and career opportunities. Me personally, I feel like Mexico City and Sao Paulo and some of these big Latin American cities are a middle ground, especially now with so many foreigners showing up because you get I guess in some ways you can get to have your cake and eat it too there because you're getting to network, maybe not as much and as high end as in Austin and stuff like that or wherever it is in your field. But you also have that all the benefits of living abroad. So I don't know. You got to figure out where you are on the fun to business spectrum, and I also say like if you don't like business that much and you're not that ambitious, like embrace it. Like that's who you are. Don't feel that you have to push yourself to the limit. But if that's who you are, then maybe the Latin life's not for you, and stay where the networking is best for you and the job. But you know as far as job opportunities go, everything's kind of going remote anyways, right? Like being in the city that where things it's not as of course it's still important because nothing beats face to face, but it's not quite as important as it used to be, right? And that's I've kind of done that, that's one of the also another benefits of Mexico City is I pop into San Diego and Austin and Miami, and those are all like three big tech and digital marketing areas all the time. I pop in,
Yeah.
pop out, and I can get those benefits of those networking and connections and things like that. So I don't know. Mexico's just so like easy mode. It might be really hard to leave, honestly. But it doesn't have what it's missing. It doesn't, because you've been doing it. It doesn't have that certain excitement that South America has, especially Brazil. But it's like it feels a bit more like Wild West, like undiscovered, kind of adventure. Mexico is maybe that's my perspective because I've been in Mexico for so long. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. My really crazy theory is that planes are going to become like twice as fast, and then Brazil will go from 12 hours of flight time to 6 hours of flight time, and it'll just be like a no-brainer, and more people
Well,
will be able to go a little bit further
well,
afield.
we'll see. United says they're bringing back a supersonic jets by 2029, but color me skeptical on that one. I think by the time that's happening, you and I are going to be well into our 50s.
Yeah, you might be right. No, I really like your thoughts on the fun versus ambition. I think that's something that every digital nomad tackles with basically on a daily basis. When you could get ahead and read about some crypto and some focus time, or you could go to the jungle party and go crazy and come back at with your face painted at 6 a.m. or whatever. So it's
Yeah, you
tough.
got to find
It's
your
tough.
balance, right? I think when our age, I think you're like in your mid, early to mid 30s as well, right?
I'm about to hit
It's
the 30 mark.
okay, yeah. I don't know. I feel like after 30 you chill out a lot. Your body like I can't do this like,
You do. But you know what it would be though?
yeah.
You know what it'd be though? Because yes, like yeah, a lot of people don't want to go to the rave, but I mean, I guess I just mean more like chilling in a beach town. You get the surfboard, you get a girlfriend, chill in the beach town, you eat some fresh mangoes, and you call it a day, and make some money online. And I guess you could, be working on like important tech stuff from your beachfront hideaway, but it might be a little bit more conducive to be in a bit of a tech hotspot. So that's kind of what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, it just depends, if that's what, it's like that old saying about like the rich businessman who goes to the fisherman and, uh I think it's a
Yeah,
Brazilian. So that every country has a variation of it, but it's basically like, oh, like how are you not more ambitious? All you're gonna do is fish. And he's like, well, what do you work hard for? He's like, oh, well, I work, really hard, so one day I can just relax on the beach and spend more time with my family. And he's like, yo, I do that every day, right? Like, what if you are ambitious? You should really ask yourself what you're being ambitious for, right? Because I feel like people like you and me that we've already had some successes and had some exits. It's like, once you have a few hundred grand in the bank, everything kind of moves from money to purpose, right? Like, what's your purpose? Like, what drives you, right? And
yeah,
maybe just chilling on the beach and surfing and like eating mangoes and hanging out with your girl, like that's what drives you. Like, you shouldn't be like shamed into thinking like this is a very American thing. Actually, we should bring this up a lot. This idea that work really, really, really hard to make the maximum amount of money that you can, and or not even money, like ambition and all this. Like everyone has to do that, and other countries have people like that, but I don't feel there's so much pressure. There's a lot of pressure in the U.S. that like you always have to be doing this, and like for some people that's a really good fit. Like that's what they want to do. But there's a lot of people I think that have been deluded into thinking that's what they want because society has put that pressure on them. And I've noticed a lot in all countries in Latin America, for better, for worse. And I know this is not super political correct, but I think that's one of the reasons that Latin America is so much poorer than US and Canada is because they don't have like that much pressure to work. Like they don't like no one like your parents, like a Colombian or Mexican parent would not like be disappointed with their child any less if they've like less ambitious or as long as they're supporting themselves and being a good person. Whereas I feel like in the US there's this constant pressure, to work harder. Oh, you made 100K. Well, now it's time to make 1 million. You made 1 million, get to 10 million. Like it's like what? Well, what are you doing all this for, anyways? Right? Like, are you even happy? Like, if that's aligned with your purpose, like you need to find where the money aligns with your purpose. And like, I haven't totally figured that out yet. I feel like in Points Panda, I kind of had something going, but it slipped away. So I'm kind of trying to figure that out now by just getting busy and kind of this is something I realize is I have a lot of my friends of mine have become very successful and I go to them and I'm like, well, what's my purpose now? And they push me like, you got to find your purpose, etc. And I started thinking deeply about it. And that's like, I hate when people ask me that when you're not really sure, because it's like, what do you do? You just sit down on a notebook and like, all right, my purpose. I feel like you kind of find it's like an adventure. You find it through being busy, through trying different things, through I know I'll know for a fact, I can tell you after the last 3 years of kind of just dicking around of where you're not going to find your purpose, and that's just doing nothing, right? At least for me, right? For other people, that maybe is what's for them, but yeah, I kind of found my medium zone. I'm a very social extrovert person, but I also like to spend a lot of time at home. I'm kind of I don't know where I put myself in the spectrum, but you have to figure that out for sure. And I think being abroad makes you kind of realize that. And yeah, so some people have kind of figured it out. I guess I'm kind of getting there. But yeah, you have to find your balance. And yeah, I do think going abroad. I mean, it's something I haven't thought about that all that much. Is it really? You might be making some sacrifices to your career. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, it's not. 25 years ago, moving to Mexico would be the death knell of your
it
career.
would have been a
Now
much
it's
bigger
like,
sacrifice. Correct.
yeah, now
Yeah.
it's like,
On the bright side, like so,
eh.
the way I think about it is my purpose is really to contribute to technology and like help advance the human species through technology. But at the same time, I do just prefer, palm trees and coconut water and mangoes and all that. And I like the lifestyle here. And on the
Yeah.
bright side, you can do that. Are you going to contribute as much incrementally to the human technological progress from here as you would in San Francisco? Probably you're going to contribute a little bit less, but as long as you're making a positive contribution, I think that's fine. And yeah, I think a lot of people have that fun ambition ratio dilemma. I like how you also said the angel and the devil. Um, dude, this has
Yeah.
been an amazing, amazing conversation. Um, is there anything else that you want to promote or mention or speak on?
Yeah, well, just stay in touch on pointspanda.com. I think I'm going to be redoing this Points Panda consultancy into an academy and see if I can't get things moving on that front again. And you can reach me there at Freddy at pointspanda.com. And yeah, I definitely nominate Raquel Ramirez. She's been the one putting together these WhatsApp and Telegram groups and getting all the gringos together in Mexico City. And I love what she's doing. She's really into the crypto space too. Talk to her, and I guess that's about it.
Okay, sick, man. Yeah, if you could put me in touch, I'd love to have her on. We definitely need some female presence on the podcast. Um, dude, this might be our best episode to date. I Speaking to you was
Really,
a
because
huge treat. I really enjoyed this conversation, dude.
it's fun. I feel it's
I
on
love
my end.
this.
I feel
I
like we're
actually,
all over the place. I was like, oh man, is he even gonna post this? We're just like jumping from topic to topic. Oh. Well, it's good. It's good, man.
I mean, we
You're
covered a
improving
lot of
my.
ground.
Uh,
Yeah, I no, I like this a lot. I mean, sorry to anyone regarding like the Wi-Fi situation, but hopefully you made it through because the value and the content and entertainment
yeah.
factor was definitely here in this one. Freddie, man, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we can meet up somewhere in Mexico or Brazil, most likely.
Yeah, yeah, sounds fun. Maybe we'll get Danny together too, and I'm happy to be a free tour guide for the deep, deep interior of Brazil, where no gringo has gone before.
Dude, it's really on my list. I've spent a month in Rio, a month in Sao Paulo, and like probably the biggest trip I want to do is do the whole Nordeste and Norte and go to Lençóis Maranhenses and Jericoacoara and
Yeah,
Natal and all that stuff. I really really want to do it. My Portuguese is pretty conversational, like pretty solid, like quite
nice.
solid. So I've been prepping. I haven't been. I was in Brazil last in April, May 2021. I went to Iguazu and stuff. But I keep listening to podcasts and I keep sort of staying in the Brazilian world. And I'm
I
getting,
know it's hard though when you're not in the
I'm
country,
working on
man.
it. I'm working on it.
I've been slipping, to be honest, man. I was doing like 3, 4 hours a week of italki classes and doing like the podcast and YouTube, but that the less time I spend in Brazil, I'm just like getting less and less. Whenever I get into the country or about to go, I get super motivated, and then it kind of slips, but it comes back. I mean, as long as you're conversational. But yeah, we'll do it up sometime.
Yeah, man. Thanks again for coming on. Again, Freddie from Points Panda. Check him out on Instagram and on YouTube. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah.
Cheers.